Venezuela was in for a shock. The Caribbean Sea, usually dotted with fishing boats and oil tankers, was suddenly rocked by an unusual sight. Thousands of United States Marines reportedly landed quietly near the northern coastline. Not only the troops, but what was most surprising was the presence of a mysterious fleet of helicopters, the HMH-464 helicopters, which some analysts have called stealth helicopters. The HMH-464 unit, known as the Condors, is part of the Marine Heavy Helicopter Squadron based in North Carolina. But why did they suddenly appear in Caribbean waters? Satellite images showed the movement of the amphibious aircraft carrier USS Kearsarge, carrying CH-53E Super Stallion helicopters. These helicopters are strongly suspected to be used by the HMH-464 squadron. Venezuelan fishermen reported the rumbling sound of giant rotor blades at night. But strangely, the sound sounded faint, as if muffled. Could this be evidence of the latest U.S. stealth rotor technology? Thousands of Marines reportedly landed in organized formations. There was no official announcement from the Pentagon, but intelligence sources referred to this operation as Rapid Caribbean Shield. The Venezuelan government was shocked. President Nicolas Maduro immediately held an emergency meeting of his military council. They considered this U.S. action no ordinary exercise, but rather a strong message. Why HMH-464? Because this squadron has a long history of covert operations. From Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, to special missions never announced to the public. Now the squadron appeared in Venezuela's backyard, right on the strategic route connecting the Caribbean Sea to the Atlantic Ocean. Locals in Puerto Cabello reported seeing a line of black helicopters flying low, with almost no navigation lights, a sight reminiscent of Hollywood war films. Speculation began to swirl. Was the U.S. preparing for a full-scale invasion, or was this simply a show of force to destabilize the enemy? Meanwhile, thousands of U.S. Marines were seen establishing temporary outposts on small Caribbean islands, complete with long-range radar and portable air defense systems. The international media was also full of coverage. Headlines read, "Shadow Marines in the Caribbean," and "Venezuela on high alert as U.S. forces arrive." The HMH-464 helicopters are no ordinary helicopters. With a carrying capacity of 36 fully armed troops, plus the ability to transport light combat vehicles, they can change the landscape of a battle in a matter of minutes. This fact is what terrifies the Venezuelan military, because in a worst-case scenario, a squadron of CH-53E Super Stallions could deploy troops within a 600-kilometer radius in just one night. The U.S. has not yet issued an official statement, but analysts believe the presence of thousands of Marines in the Caribbean is linked to international drug networks, maritime rights claims, and Venezuela's close ties with Russia and Iran. One classified report even stated that this operation is not just about Venezuela, but also about blocking Russian influence in Latin America. Against a backdrop of global tensions, every small step could trigger a major reaction. Venezuela now faces a difficult choice: stand still or fight. But one thing is certain: the appearance of the HMH-464 helicopters and thousands of U.S. Marines is no coincidence, but part of a grand strategy. And this is the beginning of a new chapter of tension in the Caribbean Sea. The world reacted strongly. Russia condemned the U.S. move as a blatant provocation. Moscow reminded them that Venezuela is a close partner. Iran, which has long maintained energy cooperation with Caracas, also spoke out, calling the operation a form of modern imperialism. Washington, on the other hand, described the troop presence as an international maritime security operation to combat drug trafficking. However, many questioned this rationale. Why deploy thousands of Marines and giant helicopters for a mere anti-drug operation? Military observers noted that this operation bore similarities to the 1989 invasion of Panama, when the U.S. used the pretext of counterdrugs to overthrow the Noriega regime. Venezuela is well aware of this history. Therefore, Bolivarian special forces were immediately deployed at strategic points, especially along the northern coast. Meanwhile, HMH-464 helicopters continued patrols, seemingly demonstrating that they could land anytime, anywhere. Some analysts called this U.S. move a shadow strategy to force Venezuela to submit without firing a single shot. But history has shown that whenever the U.S. makes a show of force, there are always major political consequences. Domestically, Venezuelans began to worry. Social media was filled with amateur footage of giant helicopters flying low, raising fear and questions. Is war about to break out? Read a comment on one viral video filmed from Margarita Beach. Meanwhile, the Pentagon remained silent. There were no details, just a brief sentence. This is part of a scheduled operation. However, leaked documents indicated a second phase to this operation, the deployment of a nuclear submarine in Caribbean waters. If true, this was not just a regular military operation, but a strategic signal that the Caribbean was firmly in Washington's grasp. Venezuela sought support. A Caracas delegation immediately flew to Moscow and Beijing, hoping for a defensive umbrella that could withstand U.S. aggression. This battle was no longer just about helicopters or Marines, but about a struggle for influence in Latin America. HMH-464 had now become a mysterious symbol. Its presence in the Caribbean was described as a dark shadow, stalking Venezuela day and night. With each turn of the rotor, Caracas feels one step closer to the brink of conflict. The world waits to see whether the U.S. will truly intervene, or whether this is simply part of a high-level diplomatic pressure strategy. One thing is certain: Venezuela is shocked, the world is shocked, and history may be writing a new chapter in the Caribbean.